Hey, welcome to the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group's November 21st, 2025 meeting. I'm Julia Hatton, and I am the DACAG chair. And just before we start, I'd like to recognize that this month is Native American Heritage Month. Before we do a roll call, I just want to remind folks that Senate Bill 544 requires members of the DACAG who are participating remotely to please remain visible on camera. If you have any challenges with internet connectivity or any other things that are preventing you from being on camera and visible to other members in the public, please publicly announce the reason that you're off camera as soon as possible. And with that, I will go to roll call. Let me make sure that I have a good view of folks. All right. Abimael is not here. Chelsea, unfortunately, is not feeling well. Chris?
Here.
Great. Hi. Elena?
Here. Hi.
Hi. Fred?
Here.
Hi. Jem?
Here.
Hello. Julia is here. Roman? Don't think I saw Roman yet.
Roman will be joining about an hour late.
Great. And Sarah?
Here.
Hello. And Sanite is absent. And with that, I believe we have quorum and can move forward.
Sorry. Is there another new member? Because I have another on my list. Michael?
Yeah, our new member won't be joining this meeting, but hopefully the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Exciting. All right. So yes, we now have quorum and can move forward with the voting items. And that is a good segue, Sarah, into item number 2. This was time that was held to meet and greet with any new members. But it looks like we are going to table this item to December when our tribal representative is going to be joining. This is really exciting. We've been waiting for this position to be filled for a very long time, and we can thank the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs for filling this seat. Does staff have anything else on this item to share?
Not at this time.
All right. Thank you. Item number 3 is general public comment. And agency staff will provide meeting reminders and instructions for this section.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. My name is Zara Jamshed. I'm support staff for the DACAG and a regulatory analyst at the CPUC. Joining us today are my colleagues Dorothy Marimi and Francisco Hernandez. We are joined by legal support from CEC with Renee Webster Hawkins, and from the CPUC with Vanessa Baldwin, as well as Deputy Public Advisor Ryan Young. A few reminders: this meeting is being recorded and is being held both remotely and in person. Our DACAG meeting lead is Julia today, and she will be facilitating the meeting and will conduct roll call votes for items the DACAG is voting on in order to ensure a clear record. We've enabled WebEx's closed captioning feature to make this meeting more accessible. To use the closed captioning, click the bottom left CC icon or press Control-Shift-A. Once captions are turned on, attendees can click on the icon with the 3 dots for more options to view captions and highlights. The chat feature is not available to attendees and is solely for panelists to ask technical, procedural, or legal questions. Now, the instructions for public comment. The public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no commenters in the room, I'll move to WebEx. We have one raised hand. Roger Lynn, you should be able to unmute and give your comment.
Thank you, and hello, Advisory Committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. I've never been on this side. You may remember Roger Lynn with Center for Biological Diversity, senior attorney, and you may remember me from prior advisory groups like this one from 2018 until 2025 or 2024. I don't know when I turned out, but it's great to be back. I believe there's an informal rule that gives me infinite time to speak, but I will stick to the rules and stick within time. And I wanted to bring the group's attention to the cost of capital proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission, which there is a proposed decision out now for. Thank you to the Public Utilities Commission for suggesting a slight decrease in return on equity for the utilities. And this is the proceeding that decides how much profit the utilities can make off of their investments. A letter on this issue was submitted to the Public Utilities Commission and the Governor's Office 2 days ago, signed by 80+ organizations, environmental groups, environmental justice groups, consumer advocate groups, saying that we should lower the return on equity even further beyond what the Commission has proposed. To put this into context, the utilities right now get about, PG&E has requested an increase from 10.28% to 11.3%. Southern California Edison, 10.33 to 11.75. And anyway, the utilities are requesting an increase in equity, resulting in annual ratepayer increases. In PG&E's service territory, it would be $351 million, 351 million again for SCE, 96 for SDG&E, and 117 for SoCalGas. To put these numbers into context, though, between 2022 and 2024, PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E shut off power to almost 550,000 residences that fell behind on bills, disproportionately impacting communities with a greater percentage of residents who are disabled, Latino, Black, low income, or have higher heating needs. By contrast, during the same time period, these companies sent $8.3 billion to their shareholders. And to put this into context, less than 1% of these profits could have prevented all of these shutoffs. So the Public Utilities Commission has an opportunity to address this mismatch. And there were several groups that also showed up at the PUC's voting meeting yesterday to talk about this. Just wanted to make sure that for the commissioners here that those messages were heard. I think your staff showed up also about the return to work policy, which I think took up a lot of the attention, but did want to make it clear that there are several of our groups looking, several groups, including the 80+ groups on this letter, are opposing any increases and want decreases in the return on equity beyond what the Commission has proposed. The Sierra Club and the Protect Our Communities Foundation are working with an expert. Their expert testimony is the only testimony in the record that takes into account impacts on ratepayers. And that expert recommends a decrease to 6% or so. But in any event, though, the profiteering of the utilities is clear. It has significant impacts on the populations that this group is charged with serving. So request that this group consider putting out a similar statement in support of the letter or coming up with its own letter. And I will let the procedural nuances kick in now to see how that would be possible for this group to vote upon taking a similar position to again decrease the utilities return on equity that is just far too high in the middle of an affordability crisis. So it's great to be back. It's great to see new faces here. Welcome to the new members, and I hope to come back soon in the future. But please discuss this. The clock is ticking. The decision will be voted on, is expected to be voted on December 18th, which is after your next meeting. So there are a variety of ways that you all could comment by then. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on WebEx? Seeing none, I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Roger. It's good to hear your voice and really appreciate you sharing those comments and that issue with this group. And I'm going to recommend that we talk about it in our priority areas section and discuss whether or not we could do a letter as you described. So thank you. With that, I'm going to open up item 4 for opening remarks from CEC and CPUC leadership. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the commissioners that are here with us today. You're welcome to say hello and share any brief remarks, starting with the CEC, Commissioner Gallardo.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm at the airport, so won't take too long. I just wanted to say hello. I'm going to be mostly in listening mode until my flight. And I'm out here in Long Beach. I think something you might be interested in. I was at a ribbon cutting for Iona, which is doing a charging for electric vehicle experience. So changing up the way things are done on EV charging. It's going to be fast charging. They're going to provide a center where you can go in case you're tired, you want to charge your phone, use the bathroom, buy some food, etc. So we're really excited about this effort that's happening to help better or improve experiences for people who want to get electric vehicles. And also they're making it cheaper for people to be able to afford the charging. So I think it'll also make it more accessible and equitable. So anyway, thank you so much for letting me say hello. Appreciate all the work that you do. And I want to remind everybody that I do have an offer out. If anybody wants to meet one-on-one, I'd be happy to. And just get to know you all as individuals better and see how I personally can support you all as a commissioner here. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the other commissioners.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gallardo. That experience definitely sounds like an upgrade from a gas station, and appreciate that offer to meet. I think that is everyone from the CEC, so I'll turn it over to the CPUC with Commissioner Houck.
Thank you, Julia.
We can't hear you right now, Commissioner.
Okay, 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I've been having a lot of audio problems with my computer. Good to see everyone. A couple of things. One, as Roger said, the cost of capital proceeding, just as PD was issued. We also issued the PD and the affordability proceeding, and that PD is going to close the proceeding. So I wanted to highlight that, and I'll ask Zara if she can make sure to send you that if you don't have it. So you can take a look at that. That is also anticipated to be voted on at our December 18th meeting. So I would encourage anyone interested to take a look at that. Also want to note that we are actively in the middle of our tribal consultation for our tribal consultation policy update, as well as our tribal land transfer policy update. So encourage anyone interested in that policy to take a look. We're being flexible on accepting comments. We'll be doing 3 regional consultations in Northern, Central, and Southern California. We're reaching out to tribes now to see if there's any interest in hosting that consultation. And then we're accepting individual consultations, and we've invited the CEC, Commissioner Gallardo, and her team in Sierra to join us for those consultations. And we're hoping in our working with the CEC in support of their OII, and we want to work together to make sure we've got consistency and are making things as efficient and easy as possible for tribal participation. So I want to put that out there. We've got a lot going on. We just adopted a telecommunications decision yesterday that created 3 regional tribal consortia to help support tribes with grants and getting infrastructure out and built on tribal lands, and updated our consortia adoption and line extension programs, and would encourage folks to take a look at that. And then we'll be having more discussions about all of that in our annual workshop in April. And then I did have the opportunity to go up to the Calusa, their community council. There was a ribbon cutting for a fiber broadband project in Calusa County. So that was a great opportunity. And as we're getting to the end of the year, there's just a lot going on, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of you. We're going to be having a workshop in January on our building decarb, and really want to engage with the group, if possible, with DACAG on input for that workshop. It's going to be a 2-day workshop, and we'll be getting information out soon, and we're going to be tying it to some of the issues that Commissioner Douglas is grappling with in the long-term gas proceeding and the zonal decarb proposals we'll be expecting from the utilities next year. So looking forward to those discussions, and Commissioner Douglas is my BK partner, so we'll both be attending that workshop and look forward to that. And with that, I will close my announcement.
It's definitely a lot going on. Thank you for sharing all of that and for being here. Is Commissioner Douglas here as well?
Right here. Thank you very much.
All
And
right.
I just wanted to join my fellow commissioners in saying hello, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. And as noted by Commissioner Houck, I think one of the main issues that I've been working on recently is just teeing up and moving forward implementation of 1221, or the legislation that we're implementing to look at the decarbonization zones and pilot projects. And so stay tuned on that, and more to come.
Definitely will. Thank you so much.
Great.
Do we have any other leadership updates? Any other agency folks? Okay, well, thank you for being here. We will now turn to item 5, which is meeting minutes. We are looking at the October 17th, 2025 meeting minutes. I believe we'll have these up on the screen in a second. And before we go to a DACAG vote, we will open this for public comment.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 5. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We will show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand, and then press *6 to mute and unmute. I am not seeing any raised hands online or in the room. So back to you.
Okay, I will now seek a motion to approve the October minutes. And just a note that if you are not here for the October meeting, you can still vote on this as long as you've reviewed the materials. So do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Elena. And do we have a second?
Second.
I think that went to Fred. We had a little bit of a tie there. What I gonna say, that was Fred. Thank you both. I will now take a roll call vote. Please say aye if you're in favor, nay if you oppose, or you can abstain. So Abimael is not here. Chelsea is not here. Chris?
Aye.
Great. Elena?
Aye.
Thank you. Fred?
Aye.
Thank you. Jem?
Aye.
Thank you. Julia, aye. Roman is not here. Sarah?
Aye.
Thank you. And Senite is not here. I believe that motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for approving the minutes. That takes us to item 6, energy equity indicators. This topic is related to our long-term planning priority area, and we are going to have CEC staff present on the CEC's Energy Equity Indicators project. I got a chance to see a preview of this a couple months back, and it was really interesting and exciting, so I'm looking forward to this presentation. And I'd like to welcome Martin Flores with the CEC to present.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. So yeah, as mentioned, my name is Martin Flores, and I am in the Energy Assessments Division at the CEC. And I am also the lead technical developer of Energy Equity Indicators. Next slide, please. Okay. So Energy Equity Indicators was originally developed in 2018 to identify opportunities and track progress of recommendations from the SB 350 Low Income Barriers Study, which required the CEC to examine barriers that low income and disadvantaged communities face when considering adopting clean energy measures. And so by tracking 9 metrics, the tool delved into 3 key indicators that help identify opportunities to improve access to clean energy technologies, increase clean energy investments, and improve resilience in frontline communities. And as a part of the 2022 Integrated Energy Policy Report, the CEC revisited the 2018 Energy Equity Indicators, which hadn't been updated since its original release, and explored the opportunity to revitalize and reimagine it. And so, next slide, please. While investigating the need to revitalize the tool, the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group suggested that we first do a literature review of existing tools, focusing on the prevalence of energy metrics and indicators to ensure that we are not duplicating any existing work. And so our investigation found that there is an energy equity information gap in existing tools as shown on this table. And this is a problem because since 2018, there have been a multitude of changes and developments to California's energy system, some being the expansion of PSPS, expanded funding opportunities, the heightened importance of an equitable clean energy transition as well. And so without a tool that can make this data available and facilitate the program implementation process, progress towards an equitable clean energy system is hindered. And so in an effort to tackle this problem, we moved forward with the plan to revitalize energy equity indicators. Next slide, please. The new version of the tool maps and visualizes data in Tableau, and it allows users to toggle data layers on and off to explore the many facets of energy equity in California. And it will also serve as a database of energy equity datasets, allowing easy access and retrieval. Our goal is for this tool to be useful within the Energy Commission in identifying solutions, prioritizing areas, and highlighting opportunities for investments in energy justice communities. And we'd also like to highlight that energy equity indicators will not be a replacement for Cal Enviroscreen 4.0, but will instead serve as sort of its energy complement. And disadvantaged communities, as defined by SB 535, should continue to be prioritized across all state programs. Next slide, please. In the new application, we want to capture something that we are calling the energy equity landscape. And the idea is that the energy equity landscape does not only include an energy component, but also includes environmental, health, community, safety, and socioeconomic components. Equity and justice studies have demonstrated that communities across the state experience a variety of injustice concerns at different levels, and those concerns very often overlap and compound. And it is important to us that the tool we create is able to accurately identify each of the individual energy concerns that a community may face and correctly measures their quantitative impact on the community. And as a result, we believe that integrating environmental, health, safety, and socioeconomic data as they relate to energy consumption and production is imperative. Next slide, please. So to accurately identify the unique energy challenges that communities face, we will divide the application into 6 themed dashboards that visualize census tract level data on a map and in statistical figures. And so the 6 themes that will be covered are shown in the diagram on the left side of this slide. All dashboards will also include additional data sets that span different topics like community, health, safety, and socioeconomics. And to balance the urgency to release this data while also ensuring accuracy, these dashboards will be released in phases. The order of release will be determined strictly by the availability of data required to provide a robust and thought-provoking set of metrics. And so this means that the first application released is the affordability themed tool, and the dashboard that will follow in the phase 2 update is the reliability themed tool. Next slide, please. So after we developed a plan for our new application, the next step was to take this plan to interested parties for input. And throughout the past few years, we have met with more than 20 interested parties that consisted of teams that were both internal and external to the CEC. In addition to the many internal teams we met with, the external teams were comprised of community-based environmental advocacy groups from across the state. Some were research teams that work in academia, and others were justice advisory groups that aim to inform state policy at large. So, oh, sorry, next slide. In the end, we identified 5 key takeaways from these discussions. And the main theme we discovered was that many partners feel there is a lack of energy metrics in existing tools, or that current metrics do not reflect their experiences accurately. Many external partners indicated that this may be leading to a concerning mismatch between funding source and the energy equity challenges that these funds or programs are meant to address. And so similarly, numerous internal partners noted that energy equity indicators seems much more relevant to the energy challenges that their work aims to address, because most tools currently available to them are too environmentally focused. And as a result, many teams that depend on data have a great sense of urgency and enthusiasm for our work. And so some teams did express concerns around barriers to use and understand energy equity indicators. Many smaller CBOs, for example, do not have the resources to digest powerful quantitative analyses. And so developing a tool that wasn't easily understandable could lead to serious misinterpretations or misuse of data. And so we also received plenty of motivating feedback that asked us to prioritize the implementation of interval meter data, and noted that they noted an overwhelming sentiment among our partners, for the use of IMD. And they mentioned that it would be the best data set to develop accurate and highly geospatially granular metrics for their work. And Lastly, we were asked to provide information on future phases so that interested parties could plan their engagement in the tool's development accordingly. Next slide, please. So upon digesting all this feedback, the third step in our process was to develop a final plan for the affordability applications as metrics. And in the end, we opted to include two established affordability metrics, which are energy burden and energy affordability gap. The second of which was suggested by one of the DACAG members. And so then we leveraged unique CEC data to create a third affordability metric that we called the Energy Affordability Index. And so we will discuss this metric in more detail in the following slides, but for now I want to state that it was specifically designed to address several of the challenges that our interested parties expressed during the public outreach efforts. And so finally, to complete the energy equity landscape scope, we decided to include data on income, demographics, SB 535 DACs, disadvantaged communities, and Jedi Justice communities. Next slide, please. So since most of the metrics that we were including already had easily accessible data sets in the public domain, we were able to focus our attention on honing the new affordability metric that we were creating. And to guide the development of our metric, we investigated where the current shortcomings of existing metrics were, which led us to two main findings. To understand the first shortcoming a little better, I want us to think of a scenario where we have two households. In one, you have a single man making $100,000 per year and paying $10,000 in annual energy costs. And then in the other, you have a family of four with the same combined income and the same annual energy costs. And so the simple energy burden calculation would take these values and calculate a score of 10% for both households. This is traditionally considered a high energy burden and would put both households past the energy poverty threshold. But we know that the family will surely be at higher risk of experiencing financial strain since food, transportation, and medical expenses will increase with each additional person in the household. And we also know that low-income families tend to live in households with more people, so ignoring household size and its associated living costs can really skew our understanding of energy poverty in the state. And although this example is specific to the energy burden, it is important to note that the energy affordability gap is quantified in using a similar method, and so the shortcoming applies to it as well. And so the second shortcoming with using established metrics is that transportation fuel costs are not normally included in the calculations. And this can be for several different reasons, but in general, transportation fuel cost estimates are rare, and data to conduct these estimates is not easily available. As a result, the energy burden values, which are most often referenced in studies, only account for fuels consumed within the home. And we know that transportation costs can be significant, and at times they can be even higher than electricity, natural gas, and fuel oil combined. So ignoring transportation fuels in our affordability metrics creates a significant gap in our understanding of total energy affordability, especially in areas with a large share of low fuel efficiency vehicles and in rural locations that require long distance trips to acquire daily necessities. Sorry, I think I got ahead of myself. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I meant to show this slide earlier. Next slide. So the method we developed to calculate this index takes the annual household income, household size, annual cost of living, and annual energy costs to calculate the financial burden that energy places on households. And then we add that to a second term that uses the household income, household size, and cost of living to find the household's ability to react to energy price changes. Then we aggregate these two terms by taking the percentile score for each term within our sample set and add them to obtain the final energy affordability index score. And the final values are then normalized and ranked so that high scores are considered least desirable and low scores are most desirable, which allows the same structure as the Cal-Enviroscreen score. Next slide, please. And to demonstrate the value that the affordability dashboard has, I want to discuss two case studies that we developed. One of them was for Imperial County and the other was for the city of Oxnard. And so these communities are ideal because they have qualitative accounts of facing inequity and injustice in different forms. And they also provide a sample set that is not identical, but similar enough that we can highlight the different reasons why a community may experience low energy affordability. And so demographically, both have large minority populations. The median household incomes are quite different though, with Imperial counties being significantly lower than those in the city of Oxnard. Their average Cal-Enviroscreen scores are also quite different, but many census tracts within both locations land within the top 25% of scores. And so this means that they are among the most environmentally burdened census tracts as determined by Cal-Enviroscreen. The average energy burdens are actually relatively low. And I say that because normally 7 to 10% is what's generally thought of as the threshold for reaching energy insecurity. But among all the census tracts within these communities, only one crosses this threshold at 7.5. And so lastly, the equity challenges and injustices that these communities face range from severe environmental burdens to being tied to seasonal or unstable economic drivers, among other challenges. Next slide, please. So here we see the energy affordability index values for Imperial County at the census tract level. In general, all census tracts seem to face low energy affordability, except for one tiny tract within the city of El Centro. Next slide, please. And here we see the city of Oxnard with the same dashboard parameters as the previous slide. And so similar to Imperial County, the minority populations here form the majority of the total locations population. And so, however, the important detail here is that the demographic makeup between East and West Oxnard is different. And the majority of the white population happens to reside in West Oxnard, where the energy affordability index scores are going to be significantly lower. And so this points to some of the demographic disparities that have been captured qualitatively within the city. And so, in summary, the resulting average energy affordability index value for Oxnard is significantly lower than that of Imperial's. But again, when we split between East and West Oxnard, we see that the average for the census tracts on the west side of the city is more comparable to Imperial's average. And so again, this is alarming because, as we mentioned earlier, this is the side with the demographic makeup that is predominantly Latino, and their experience seems to be vastly different from the west side of the city. And so to dig a little deeper, we can also, sorry, can you go to the next slide, please? I apologize for that. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Yeah. To dig a little deeper, we can investigate specifically which of the energy affordability index's data inputs are leading to financial challenges among households. And for Imperial County, we see that though they have the lower transportation costs, their in-home energy costs are much higher, mostly due to significantly higher needs for cooling off in the desert climate. And so in addition to this, they also have very low incomes. The basic self-sufficiency standard or basic cost of living for a family of 4 within the county is just below the state's median income. And since the average household size is almost 4, we can expect most families to have very little expendable income remaining to cover energy costs. after covering other household costs. And so communities by the coast generally have cooler climates, which will require less in-home energy consumption than in Imperial. And this is reflected in Oxnard's in-home energy costs. In Oxnard, families are generally larger than in Imperial, but incomes are also comfortably higher than the basic self-sufficiency standard. So this is not an issue in the same way that it is for Imperial County. And here, the main factor driving poor energy affordability is that the significantly higher transportation costs, which are about 40% higher than the state's average. Next slide, please. And so, lastly, I want to cover one more part of the state, which was not investigated in a case study, but presented some important insights related to tribes when that we want to eventually dive further into. Here we have a screenshot of our high-level dashboard as it's mapping the average power outage duration experienced per customer throughout the year of 2022. And we placed a black box around the state's north coast. And so in Trinity County specifically, customers faced about 15 days without power, which is significantly more than any other county. And for comparison, this amounts to outage durations that were 1,000 times longer than most of the state. Next slide, please. Here we have a map of California's North Coast displaying energy affordability index scores as shown in our deep dive tool. And this time I placed a black box around Trinity County alone since the North Coast was already filtered. And when we scan the region, we see that in general, energy is not affordable. But Trinity County is almost entirely in the least affordable quartile of our scale. So, next slide, please. The area of Trinity County in particular is of interest to us because within it we have about 15 different federally recognized tribal nations, and through them we have known for some time now that the North Coast experiences significant energy reliability challenges. However, the affordability challenges that they experience are not as often key points of discussion. And so we can see how the layering of multiple levels of inequity in this region indicates that this is exactly the type of location that we should be prioritizing in the state programs. After all, Trinity County specifically is a place where all the energy challenges that we investigated today overlap and compound. But in general, the census tracts in this region have very beautiful and well-maintained landscapes, so their pollution burdens are actually very low. And as a result, some of the screening tools that are currently used, which are heavily environmentally focused, do not favor prioritization for this region. But with a robust and highly detailed set of metrics that are uniquely energy focused, we can more accurately understand and characterize the energy experiences of our state's communities. And in turn, we can also facilitate and expedite the action needed to address these challenges through objective and data-driven methods. Next slide, please. So a demonstration of this tool has been live since September 15th on the CEC's website. Earlier this month, we finished the last set of updates and are currently in the revisions review process, which means that we will soon be able to publish the official affordability application. And in regard to the phase 2 timeline, we have already begun our public engagement by joining in on the tribal roundtable meetings to engage with the indigenous population. And we will reach out to more interested parties in the future and are also open to meet with any parties that reach out to us. After public engagement, we will transfer the Tableau application to ArcGIS to leverage more powerful data visualization applications. And next we will leverage interval meter data for the state to calculate unique and highly accurate energy reliability metrics and begin to develop the reliability dashboard upon completion. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, so one last thing. So we presented, there's a longer form of this presentation, which went a lot better in the September 15th workshop, and I invite you guys to watch it, because there I was able to go into a lot more detail on what the planning process looks like, what some of the feedback that we received from stakeholders was, and how we implemented it into our tool. And it also gives a slightly deeper analysis on the case studies, which also includes the community of Wilmington in LA County. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to discuss this. I think we start with public comment. Is that right?
Yes. The DACAG now welcomes public comments on item 6. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and will alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. And for those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no one in the room, we'll see if there's anyone on WebEx or the phone. I see one hand from Tom Phillips. You should be able to unmute and give your comment.
Hi, Tom here. Thanks so much for updating this energy burden metric and so on. I think it's going to really improve targeting the sensitive and vulnerable groups. I just wanted to reiterate that it's still underestimating the heat exposures based on the metrics and data you're using, because it doesn't really get into the housing characteristics in terms of their cooling efficiency and equipment and so on. So even though you may have a home on the coast that doesn't have a high energy bill, they don't often have any cooling equipment. So when you look at the mortality data and heat waves, you see the highest risks for indoor heat on the coast. And that's been changing over the years, but there's still a lot of vulnerable people there, especially say on the North Coast. So I'm glad you're diving into those different regions. And even in Oxnard, you might see a difference between East and West in terms of the cooling efficiency of the buildings or the cooling equipment, because the weather, within 10 miles from the coast is much different once you get inland. The other quick comments I would say is to look at some different metrics for outages, because the ones that are really deadly are the outages that last multiple days. So the number of outages and the number of total per year is not a good indicator of the real risks for indoor heat exposure or lack of medical equipment, things like that. Mm-hmm. Let's see. There's also, if you're not aware of it, I did see some work recently on energy affordability from Carnegie Mellon University by Destiny Knock. She did a webinar last year at UC Davis, and they have several papers on this. And I think they've been looking at East Coast data, but I think you should definitely look at their work and talk to them. And also Bruce Tunn at 3E in Knoxville, who's one of the leaders in energy equity burden issues in the US. How am I doing on time? Oh, a minute? Okay. Let's see. Also, for air quality, I don't know, I think the metric there didn't seem that helpful either. I think air quality index might be good. I'm not sure how you're evaluating that in terms of the health risks and burden. And also, there's a big gap, and I'm not sure how you address this, is the joint effects of heat and air pollution, like ozone and particulate matter. There was a nice webinar yesterday from Department of Public Health by Nita Shakur at UCSF. And so that they've starting to map out some of those compound risks, and they're starting a study to look at the housing factors as well. So I think there's a lot to be gained there by factoring those things in now, and as they get better housing data and so on. I know the study by Williams and others from Harvard have looked at this housing issue in terms of comparing it to Allen screen and how the indoor heat exposures are being underestimated. So I submitted comments on this earlier, so I hope you can catch up with all of this information. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Phillips, did you have an affiliation for the record or none?
I'm a guest researcher at CDPH, and I do pro bono work as healthy building research. I work for advise on CHIPS, Collaborative for High Performance Schools, and other environmental groups.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, turn it back to you, Julia.
Great. And thank you for that comment. Martine, did you want to respond in any way to Tom, or anything you want to add before we go into DACAG discussion?
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much. That was a lot of good information. I'm glad you mentioned Destiny Knox. She's actually someone that I spoke to when I first began developing the Energy Affordability Index when I was in college. So basically, yeah, it's something that I started working on as a homework assignment, and then eventually it just built into something bigger at the CEC. And I spoke to her. She sent me one of her presentations, and she sort of opened my eyes to what some of the shortcomings of the energy burden were. In regards to air quality, we actually don't really we don't track air quality. So yeah, but that is of course something important that we can consider. Then I think there was a comment around the equipment in buildings and a building's efficacy in cooling or efficiency, cooling efficiency. So that is, well, you mentioned that these effects will, like, they seem to be changing, and they are most likely worsening, right? We do include again, this was only a 15-minute presentation, so there was a lot that I could not cover. We do sort of touch a little bit on that in the presentation that I gave on September 15th. We do discuss like the climate vulnerability and that sort of stuff. And then in regards to, I think you mentioned urban heat islanding. That is something that we were also investigating. It just requires more work. So we have not released anything on that yet. And I think that is all I can remember. I'm sorry if I missed anything, but thank you for your comment nonetheless.
Great. Okay, I'd love to turn this over to our members for discussion. I'll say that the thing that struck me the most when I heard the first version of this presentation is just the fact that most affordability metrics are not correcting for household size. And I just sort of can't wrap my head around that. So it raises a lot of questions for me. I'm really excited to see it represented here, and also to see how it impacts the data and the metrics and the visualization. I think the case studies that you presented are particularly helpful for showing how different data sets show different things. And, I appreciate your point that we're not necessarily trying to replace one with the other, but we're trying to find complementary tools and fill in gaps with existing tools. And it seems to me that does this pretty well. Yeah, I have a question, but I will hold it for later and pass it over to my other members.
Commissioner Gallardo has her hand raised. I don't know if you wanted to. We want to have the
Thank you.
DACAG
Yeah,
members
go ahead.
first.
No, Commissioner Gallardo, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'll be quick anyway. I wanted to uplift that the energy equity indicators endeavor started with Commissioner Douglas when she was at Energy Commission. Now she's at Public Utilities Commission. I'm hoping she's proud of this progress here. And I wanted to also acknowledge that this work that Martin is leading is not required. It's not thoroughly mandated. It was an effort that we thought needed to be done because it's so important to get the nuance correct, and it's challenging. And so I want to congratulate Martine also for just diving in, spending so much time trying to get this right and listening to everyone, getting more insight and expertise on how we can really nail this down. So, and thank you, DACAG, for participating and helping us make this an even better tool for our communities. We really want it to be accessible. We want it to be something that makes make it easier to be able to get energy needs addressed correctly and quickly. So I'll leave it at that. Just want to make sure I acknowledged the leadership that was happening here to get us to this point with the tool. Thank you.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Any members?
Julia, I don't know if you want to also let Commissioner Douglas speak. Can you see?
I'm
I don't know
sorry,
if
I
you can
can't see the, yeah, for
hands-
some reason
hands? Okay. And then
yes, please.
Thank you.
you.
It's not easy doing these remote meetings and seeing everybody raise their hand, but I just wanted to acknowledge Commissioner Gallardo's comment and thank her. I was smiling as I listened to that presentation. Sometimes you start something and it's harder than it sounds, and it struggles for a while, and then a couple of years later you get the presentation and it sounds really interesting and good. And so I appreciate the work that the Energy Commission's done, and I look forward to learning more about the indicators, and I know it has not been easy.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Okay, are there other raised hands?
there was me and Elena, as far as I can see. I don't know. I can see everybody. And then Chris.
Please go ahead. I don't know why I can't see that. Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Thank you, Martine, for that presentation. That was amazing. I actually was not aware this was happening, but I'm agree that it was very much needed. And I'm sorry that I missed the workshop, and I wonder if I know you said you were willing to meet with other groups, but is there any additional workshops or presentations scheduled that we can help get people to? Because I think there's a whole network of folks that I work with in the San Joaquin Valley and actually across the state that may be interested, especially in Northern California. Because this was a huge gap of data that we didn't have, or a place, especially accessible, I guess. But I don't have a lot of detailed feedback right now because I think it's just a lot to take in a short presentation. But I would love to learn, see more and play with it. And but I appreciate the effort, and I understand how difficult it is to get something like this going. I worked on the predecessor to Cal Envirus Green and kind of through all of its iterations, and just understand that this is going to be an iterative process. Thank you. I think that's all. If there's any workshops or public process, it sounds like since there's no statutory requirement to do this, maybe it's less funded to do that kind of outreach, but let me know.
Yeah, we don't have any workshops scheduled at the moment. It'll depend on how quickly we can get phase two going. But what I will say is that we have increased the resources that are available to the team. So thankfully, phase two will go much quicker than phase one. Of course, when we make significant progress, we will, if you guys take us, we'll be happy to come back and discuss again, and we will be sharing information on any workshops that do come up in the future, so you can let everybody know.
It's great. Elena, and then Chris, and then Jem.
Martin, good to see you. And you won't be surprised to hear that I absolutely love this and think this is incredibly awesome. It's very, very cool to see where this come. I, like any data person, have 2 data questions or asks that I think are low lifts and maybe you're already doing. And one is it possible to divide the energy burden into the source so that we can see if it's from electricity or from gas or from something else? I think as we start talking about all these electrification questions, like that will be like a really interesting piece of data.
Mm-hmm. So it is possible to divide the energy burden into the source. So we do several different disaggregations on
Yeah.
the energy affordability metrics in the dashboard.
Okay.
We disaggregate by tenants and a few other things. The energy source is one that we don't have yet, but it is possible, and that is something that will be coming.
Yes. Great. Okay.
Tableau is just a little bit slow, so we need to transfer to RJS before we.
I was like, I've also built things in Tableau, and I totally understand. I just wanted to put in a plug for that because I think that'll be really helpful as we're like figuring out some of those transition questions. And then number 2 is, are you going to be? This seems like this could be a very cool baseline for tracking change over the next, honestly, for decades. Are you thinking about a way that we can, let's say, look at the change in energy affordability burdens over time, starting with this year, and then slowly you can say like, all right, gas prices went up this amount or whatever. What is that actually doing to bills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that's absolutely something that we're aiming to do as well. With future updates, we're not going to be removing the previous data. We're only going to add like a new layer that shows, the more current data so that you can see how energy affordability has transformed, or energy reliability, or whatever it is, has transformed throughout the years. We're not going to have super frequent updates. So, there's that, but we're trying to tie this to the IPER process. So every 2 years is probably when we will be doing updates.
And every 2 years, honestly, sounds pretty great, given what we have, which for most places is no updates and no regular way to track this at all. So I am very excited to hear you doing this, and thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, and then Jem.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Martine. Thank you for this work. It's really important. You mentioned doing it in alignment with the IPER process. Can you talk a little bit more about the intentions around any sort of tie-ins with the IPER process more generally?
Well, I guess there's not much that I can go into the idea. I mean, okay, this kind of came about because, again, the goal was to create historical data to see how communities transform over time, right? This is kind of where it begun. And we need to we decided that the best process to tie it to where we could also was the IPER process, because that's already a process in which we are developing reports and showing some of the work that, like, ultimately the IPER is like the thing that the CEC produces, right? And so it just kind of made sense. It really didn't go much deeper than that.
Thank you. I think there are opportunities to kind of formalize the tie-ins across these metrics in the IPER process. So I'm interested to see how this group could potentially support some additional integration there. But I'm glad we made the connection to that process, because my mind went immediately to hosting capacity for more DERs and whether that's sort of tracked here. And to the extent that this can be something that informs where program administrators are targeting for deploying incentive programs, for example, for DERs, for electric vehicles, et cetera. I think it would be important to know in that pursuit where we might have infrastructure constraints. So hosting capacity, although it's not directly tied in to energy affordability, it could be a hindrance to deploying some of those DER solutions that can save folks money. Similarly, I think it would be interesting to see if we could track some additional metrics, potential interconnection timelines for DERs. So to the extent that incentive programs are successful in targeting areas with high energy burden toward providing those communities the needed relief, well, how long does it actually take to energize those solutions, those DERs? It can be a challenge in sort of more rural parts of the state. Service planning is a real thing. So I think it's also an equity indicator to know how timely folks are being served by their utilities. And I think that would be an interesting addition to the metrics tracked here. So I just wanted to plug that and really appreciate the work that's been done here. I see it as really generative for some of the planning that can happen sort of on the tail of looking at the data analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a really great comment. So I guess just to explain one more time, energy equity indicators isn't just an affordability thing. It's we're going to go much deeper than that. It's just the first in the first phase we were able to release affordability metrics because that's generally where most of the energy equity world has focused. And so that data was more readily available. But the comment about hosting capacity, that's actually something we've heard a few times, and that is something we've been considering. It seems like several folks want to see that, and so we're interested in doing what we can to include that. And then tracking potential interconnection timelines. I think that well, that's an idea that I think that's a great idea. It's not one I've heard before, and that's absolutely something that we can begin to investigate how we would do. Because yeah, I think you made a really great point that knowing how timely utilities are serving the folks that they serve is very important to understand and is absolutely an energy equity component. So yeah, this is something we'll absolutely think about more.
Great discussion. Jem?
Hi, yeah, thank you for this. I really appreciate this work, and it helps us to identify where we have to shift our attention. And yeah, it's a lot to digest. I'm not an expert at this, but I do have a question that I hope I can express this right. It's funny, like, when we compare things that we're like, okay, well, they're using this much and this group is using that much, but if the energy was there or if it was affordable, somebody would use it. So for example, like in our communities, a lot of people don't use their air conditioning because they just can't afford it. So how do you figure that out? And like in the rural areas, like tribal areas, a lot of them have like wood burning stoves still and things like that. How do you, like, if they had it, like, how can you get to that equity line if we're comparing oranges and apples? Does that make sense? Did I express that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's actually something we are thinking about. So wood burning and that stuff, that can be really difficult to track. Like, we haven't exactly figured out a method to crack that. But in terms of electricity consumption, and like electricity affordability, There is one way to investigate that that we've already begun to sort of plan the development for. So basically, and this actually goes back to Destiny Knock. One of the papers that she published looked at something called energy inflection temperatures, and the idea is that depending on your income, you're going to turn on your AC during a heat wave, for example, at a higher temperature, right? Because you are trying to save as much money as possible. And so when you look at the energy inflection temperature, which is that point, that temperature at which communities tend to turn on their air conditioners, you find that low-income families are indeed exposing themselves to really hot temperatures and more health risks because they're trying to save on money. And so you can begin to sort of characterize the places where, you know, it may seem like their energy bills are low or they're not spending a lot of, or they're just being really efficient with energy. But in reality, what they're doing is, you know, they're exposing themselves to health risks because they can't afford to pay energy, right? You can understand that by calculating energy inflection temperatures. And that's one of the things that we plan on doing with the interval meter data. That is the data set that will feed a bunch of other metrics, inflection temperatures is one of the first ones that we want to tackle.
Thank you.
Are there additional raised hands?
I know I raised my hand again. I don't know if we're all on like second hands or
Yeah, go
second.
for it. Go for it.
But I just wanted to chime in on the comment that Chris made because that was what I was thinking. It kind of read my mind. I was wondering if in any of the other components, there's like the infrastructure availability, which I guess is hosting capacity is another way to call it. But just generally as an energy equity issue, there is the availability of varying fuels, which would get to kind of a part of what Jem was talking about, as far as like historically, like some of the communities that don't have natural gas, they only have propane and wood. And we do have some maps on that. And then also like the SB 1221 maps where they've identified where the gas lines need to be updated, upgraded. And so those are areas that are eligible for zonal decarb. I guess it would be cool to have that layer in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Is that planned?
Well, we don't have a specific like plan for that yet, but it is something that we want to investigate. There's like as was mentioned previously, this isn't this work is in many ways sort of voluntary, and so we're limited on resources. So there's a lot that we want to do that we just haven't been able to begin even exploring in detail. And so that happens to fall within that bucket, unfortunately, simply because data availability makes it a more difficult challenge. So I guess in regards to how we select which things we want to work on immediately, it really comes down to data availability because we just don't have the resources to tackle some of these things yet.
Thank you. That gives me some ideas of how to help you. But the other question I had is about I forget who asked, but I think maybe it was Julia or somebody, maybe Elena, about the keeping track over time. Is there like with SB 535 and the Cal Enviro screen, they they create a list of kind of the highest rating on a scale, with everything of like which census tracts are rating higher and lower and stuff. Is there anything like that, or is it just a map and a visualization? Like, is there a list that shows which communities or which census tracts are scoring higher on the affordability or lack of affordability or whatever?
Yeah, There actually, yeah, we followed the same method that Cal Screen followed when we were developing the Energy Affordability Index. So for the energy burden, for example, that's an established metric that's represented as a percentage, and we represent it that way. Or for example, like the energy affordability gap, it's represented differently. And so yeah, it's like so with the energy affordability index, which is what we developed, we ranked we did like a percentile ranking from 0 to 100. And so with Calendar Screen, 100 would represent the most environmentally burdened communities, and for us 100 represents the most the communities that face the most financial strain. And so yeah, we basically created that same list.
Is that list available on the website?
Yeah,
Or-
so yeah, there's a data set again. So we released sort of like a preview to the affordability dashboard, and that does include a data set that includes the energy affordability index values. Those are not final, so please don't reference them in anything yet. But the final values are being reviewed at the moment, so they'll be out soon. The official dashboard data will be out soon.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Elena and Chris, did you have second hands? No.
Oh, no, mine is still probably just up.
Okay. And Commissioner Douglas, did you have a second hand?
I'm so sorry, I did not. I will put my hand down.
No, you go. I think it's because I'm running the web version instead of the app. Okay. The thing that I was curious about is how this new energy affordability index metric might be used by other agencies, including by the CPUC. And I'm sort of mapping that onto the fact that the affordability proceeding, I believe, is closing. But how could this be, how is this going to be used by the CPUC? Let's start there. And then I'm curious about other agencies and other applications.
Well, since they are sister agencies, that's not really for us to decide. We want to put the tool out there, and then if they find use in it, we'd be very happy for them to use it. And if they want us to help them come up with ideas, we're happy to do that as well. I know that they also have their own form of affordability metrics, though. Like, for example, there's the affordability ratio at the CPUC, and that's a metric very similar to the energy affordability index that is used for forecasting energy. So it's a different purpose. So they're calculated in a different way. And so I guess, yeah, I guess the answer is I don't know how they would use it. We don't really, we're not trying to impose
Do you know,
anything on. Go ahead. Sorry.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Can someone answer the question if the CPUC affordability ratio takes into account household size or adjusts for household size?
Hi, this is Ankit Jain with the CPUC Energy Division. Yeah, I can respond to that question. The metrics that were developed, including the affordability ratio metric that Martine just mentioned, they do not take into account household size. The primary purpose of those metrics is really to understand how affordability compares across different parts of the state. And then also, as Martine mentioned, one of the main goals of developing that metric was to develop something that can forecast changes in affordability over time as a result of rate increases or decreases, as well as kind of general changes in macroeconomic conditions. So with that in mind, household size, we felt like when we were developing this metric wasn't something that would really add to the ability to understand affordability comparisons across different parts of the state geographically. or the ability to understand changes in affordability as a result of rate increases or decreases. And we also felt that by trying to characterize affordability for households of different size, it would kind of complicate the ability to communicate what those affordability results look like. Again, primarily with the eye towards communicating differences in affordability geographically as well as over time.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I don't have the data background that you do, and I'm also, it seems to me like rate increases would have a would be directly or the affordability of energy based on rate increases would be directly impacted by household size. I'm curious about that one.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we were to calculate the affordability ratio metric for a household of 3 people, and then also separately calculate the affordability ratio metric for a representative household of 4 people, and then we were to try to understand what the affordability impact is if rates were increased, for instance, as a result of a GRC application that increased revenue requirement for utilities, we would definitely see a change in the affordability outcomes for the 3-person household as well as the 4-person household. But we're not getting any additional information, I'd say, by having the results for the 3 and the 4-person household size customer. If there's an affordability, if there's a deterioration in affordability for a representative household, we're going to see that across households of all different sizes, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
And even when you're adjusting for the income of that household size, the number of people in that household?
Well, we are looking at affordability for household at particular points on the income distribution. I guess what I'm saying is that that measurement of affordability is neutral to the number of the average number of people who are in that representative household. And I guess what I'm saying is that if we were to see a decrease in affordability results as a result of the rate increase, you would see that for both a smaller size household as well as a larger size household. And having the results for representative households of different sizes would get you the same, basically the same information.
I think in the case studies, we saw that it doesn't get the same information. So I guess my question is there a possibility of the CPUC using this new affordability index as a replacement or replacement of or supplement to some of your affordability metrics that you use today? Just because I think there is a difference for like a household of 5 people and a household of 1 making the same income, and they could be very differently impacted by rate increases from an affordability perspective.
We can certainly look into how this additional set of metrics could be used to supplement the metrics that have been developed by the CPUC. Again, I'd say that one of the main objectives with the metrics that were developed by the Commission was having something that we can forecast out into the future and use to model affordability impacts as a result of rate changes. So forecastability is very important to the metrics that we've developed. And we would want to understand if the metrics that are being discussed here could also be used in a similar fashion. I see that Commissioner Douglas has her hand raised. I'm wondering if Commissioner Douglas, if you wanted to add anything as it relates to the Commission's use of these metrics.
Thank you. I will just say that I think it would be valuable to arrange some a briefing. I don't, it doesn't sound like the CPUC staff has really gotten a chance to dig into this and see what it does. But different tools are often optimized for different things, and we would really need to understand what's in this and how it compares to the equity indicators that the CPUC has put together, and what the relative strengths of each approach are, and what they could take from each other. So it's not a simple answer of use this instead of that. It's what can we learn from this approach. But
Yeah,
I do
that's
think it would be valuable.
yeah, I agree. Thank you for suggesting that. Yeah, and also completely understand that it requires more research and analysis, and would love to see that happen. And looks like, Roman, did you have a comment as well?
Yes, sorry about that. I was on mute, and sorry for joining late. So I missed the majority of the presentation. So please let me know if what I'm about to ask was already answered. Just curious, I think kind of building off what you were asking, Julia, around the use of this tool or these metrics, right? Like for the CEC, are you all thinking that now that these set of indicators will go live, like that this will influence in some way the investments that you all are making or the way that you're making investments, right? Looking at the other things that are listed here, right? Like, CalEnviroScreen, right? Like that's used in a way to better target incentive or funding, right? To our most disadvantaged communities. And now with these indicators, we're kind of more clearly laying out the need for energy equity and who has the biggest gaps, right? Like, so will this then kind of help better target the incentive programs that y'all are developing?
Yeah, that's basically, yeah, that's entirely the goal. We want to make more informed decisions. Well, one, we want to identify where the communities that would benefit the most from CEC programs and investments are, and we want to understand to what extent exactly what their energy challenges are, so that we can make very very direct, I guess, interventions at tackling the specific problems that they may be facing or challenges that they may be facing. So yeah, it is. The idea is that it will be informing the way that the CEC makes these decisions.
That's great. It's good to hear. It'll be really helpful. And then I wonder, since this is still not completely live, right? Like I think you mentioned, it's getting closer. It's near kind of the finalization of it. When would this then be incorporated to potentially start seeing that that influence on the programs, right? Like next funding cycle, or do y'all have an idea?
That's probably not a question for me to answer.
Yeah.
If any management members from the CC want to answer that, I'd welcome them to.
Yeah, and as someone from the CEC, if they can come on, that'd be great, just to have a sense, right, of like what the thought process is there. I would also ask, like, as a follow-up as well, on just now that these indicators are here, right? Like, are they thinking about just like when some of the investments are made? I hear like, Energy Commission is exceeding its investments in disadvantaged communities by X%, right? Like, so now will these indicators also be part of that evaluation process, right? To determine like the level of investments that they're making and where they're making the investments?
Yeah, so that's also something we've heard from stakeholders. They wanted, I guess, in their words, they wanted more transparency, and they wanted accountability. And so when we informed them on the work that we were doing, that was one of the things that they requested us to focus on. And so, yeah, we absolutely want to be able to track where investments are going and the impact that they are having. And again, that's also the goal. That's also one of the reasons why we want to include historical data, because then you'll really be able to track exactly how investments impacted communities, right? And so then you'll be able to make more like better informed decisions on what works and what doesn't. So so yeah, that's the goal.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I can tell there's a lot of energy around this topic. Martine, again, thank you for your work and your leadership on this. Yeah, excited to see where this goes next and hear how it might impact other agencies as well as the CEC's own investments. So thank you for doing this work and for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. And yeah, if you get a chance, please watch the other presentation. There's so much more that I wanted to cover, that I was able to cover. And if you guys have any more comments, always feel free to reach out. Our email is just energyequityindicators@energy.ca.gov. So, so yeah, thank you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, let's see. We are just a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm going to suggest that we do our break now, and that when we come back from the break, we move into, oops, wait a minute. Am I in the right? No, I'm not in the right section. Sorry. Take that back.
Yeah, we have our presentation from Jem, but
yes.
I do
Perfect.
see that
Okay.
she's having camera issues, so I don't know if maybe we do want to take our break now instead. I don't know if it's been fixed.
Yeah, I think we're still working on it, so maybe let's take the break now.
Okay, and we are actually in that case a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. All right, so let's take a 5-minute break or so. Let's come back at 2:38. We'll see you soon. Thank you. All right, folks, I'm going to start gently welcoming people back. Click Jem, I can see you. Yay. It's good news. We are about to move on to item 7. This topic or this agenda item is related to our affordability, disconnections, electric reliability, and long-term planning priority areas. And our very own DACAG member, Jem Montez, will present her spotlight on Inland Empire EJ communities. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for doing this today.
I hope I got all my IT issues done. Can you still see me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Alrighty. So yes, hi. My name is Jem Montez, and I live and work in the Inland Empire in Southern California. I've been an advocate in my community for years, but was fortunate to get hired by the People's Collective for Environmental Justice, or PSEDG, a little more than a year ago as a policy analyst advocate. It's kind of funny to put this together because I thought, wow, I'm repeating everything that everybody already knows and experiences, or people on the DACAG are already working on. So like, how do I do this? I live in a city called Colton, which is less than 16 square miles. And it's known as Hub City, which is a term that comes from the railroad industry that's always had a really strong presence in Colton. Next slide. So the Inland Empire is comprised of San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and San Bernardino is the largest county by land area in the nation. But because there's so much land, it's generally cheaper than other areas. So years ago, you could get a great piece of land with a nice house, and you could have space for a garden, chickens, horses, livestock, all those things. And so many people would love to have that opportunity today, I'm sure. You could wake up to lots of sunshine part of the year, and other days you'd wake up to snow-capped mountains with just a touch of sunshine and a brisk breeze. It used to be home to wonderful vineyards, citrus groves, and lots of other agriculture. But for years, the Inland Empire has gotten a bad rap. If you used to live in if people knew you lived in the 909 area, which was deemed by area code, it was kind of like frowned upon. But still, even today, on long weekends or during vacations, people flock to the Inland Empire to ski or hike or, do other really cool recreational activities. Now, I'm sure most of you know all of this, but it's important for me to mention for those who don't. Next slide. So the original caretakers of the land in the Inland Empire noted as Serrano, Cahuilla, and Luiseno people. I wanted to acknowledge the importance of including them in our conversations as we work to restore their homelands, and I expressed my gratuity for allowing me to call this my home. And on this slide, you can see some of the recent demographics of the county. And more than half of the population is made up of Latino residents. Over a century ago, due to labor demands, many people of color were recruited and migrated to the Inland Empire to work on the expanding railroad network through promises of great wages and other benefits. They answered the call for labor to support agriculture as well. From my perspective, things haven't changed much. Now they're being recruited to work at Amazon warehouses and in the logistics industry. The other demographics are also an important part of the story I'm about to share with you. It'll explain how we got to this point and why some communities experience such inequities. Next slide. My primary areas that I work in are Bloomington, which is an unincorporated area, and the cities of San Bernardino and Colton. They're all frontline communities, and the demographics here show some of our vulnerabilities. More than half of all the people in these communities speak a language other than English at home, and most of these have Spanish as their first language. And it's really a struggle to make sure that meetings have translation services or documents are translated. A lot of times we have to ask for an interpreter like a week ahead of time. And then they just translate the comments. So it's really hard for them to give any meaningful comments if they're not translating the entire meeting. but we fight that every day, which I'm sure most of you have as well. Next slide. So let's back up for just a minute. Early in my presentation, I mentioned that the IE has lots of land, undeveloped land, and oftentimes cheaper than other places. And we have a robust train transportation network. And all of these things, along with a few others, made us a target for certain businesses, especially those that need lots of land and are high pollution generators. So in 1984, the California Waste Management Board paid consultants to locate sites for locally undesirable land use. This report is known as the Sorrell Report. And you can see on this slide that the Inland Empire checks off a lot of these boxes as least likely to resist. This is part of why we have so many frontline communities in the Inland Empire. Yes, there are a lot of other factors that play into this, but these are the ones that really put a target on our back. And unfortunately, this is not only prevalent in the Inland Empire. You can also see some of the attributes of the most likely to resist as well. Next slide. So in my work, my arch nemesis is bad air quality. And we've had some of the worst outdoor air quality for years. But in 2025, San Bernardino took first place in the American Lung Association's State of the Air Report. Yeah, it's not something we're really proud of. But, you know, air, it's a complicated relationship. We all need air, but bad air is scary because it's invisible and it lurks around your home and places you hang out, and you don't even know it's there until it's too late. And because the Inland Empire is a valley surrounded by majestic mountains, pollution from our area and other areas gets pushed our way and trapped in our communities. So we try to focus on reducing our emissions and support others' efforts as they try to reduce theirs as well. The amount of particulate matter, 2.5, or PM 2.5, or is smaller and extremely concerning. So you can see on the slide that the amount of unhealthy air days based on particulate pollution is going up. And in the lower left, you can see the disproportionate amount of warehouse development in the Inland Empire. And that says a lot. It's really sad, but my family and other community members actually plan our days around the air quality. This impacts our outdoor activities such as birthday parties, gatherings, bike rides, barbecue, or even just exercise. I would go over the horrible impacts of health impacts, but that would be a whole different presentation too. Next slide. Along with trying to manage the more than our share of warehouses, or what's been designated as a warehouse concentration area, we have other challenges we deal with regularly. The goods movement really encompasses so many of our challenges, but to be honest, it's so much more than that. Our public safety power shutoffs are really impacting our ability to create a safe space during bad air days, caused by it simply being way too hot or wildfires or a dozen other reasons. If you don't have power, then it doesn't matter how many air filters you have or air conditioners or fan, or whatever you have to help mitigate the impacts. So it's really hard to encourage frontline communities to get electric cars or trucks, or even the school districts, they don't get buses. Encouraging people to get heat pumps could really put them more at risk with the unpredictable or lengthy power outages. So how do we fix this? Next slide. While many solutions have been offered up, few, if any, have really moved forward, at least significantly. Indeed, the current administration's offered us a whole new set of hurdles, but even before that, there's always seemed to be a reoccurring thing that undermines any solutions that we could possibly give us and the planet any relief. So we have all these things that happen, and they're often rejected or rolled back or changed in some way. And I think we have to find some way to get off the infrastructure hamster wheel. That's what I kind of call it. I can't tell you how many suggestions or rules or ideas we have to reduce our air pollution. And so many of them end up in the trash because someone says, well, you know, we just don't have the infrastructure to execute this. I get it, we're trying, and it can be discouraging, and I know I'm not alone. But when I hear the conversation that the DACAG members bring forth, it really gives me some hope. And this is California. If anyone can figure this out, I think we can. Next slide. So I'm so grateful that I was selected to be in this advisory group. I'm hoping to get answers that lead to solutions and to learn about existing solutions or answers that I can share with my community as we work to make each day better than the next. But moving forward, we know we really have to prioritize frontline communities, have some real engagement, holistic solutions, and minimize impacts. And definitely accountability matters. That's, I guess I kind of wanted to also touch on some of the things that are kind of like weighing on our minds. And that would be, with our warehouses being empty, a lot of them right now, we're really concerned about the data centers and how that's going to impact our communities, as well as the mining industry, because San Bernardino County has, I think it's over 90 active mines that I never knew about. And we're trying to do some kind of ethical mining guidelines that we can use in the future. A lot of times, the only thing that works, at least to stall a lot of these projects, are lawsuits, and lawsuits suck. But they can slow things down, and they do give people like an opportunity to relocate or to figure out a solution. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but sometimes that's the only way that people will listen to us. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and if you have any questions, go ahead.
Jem, thank you so much. That was really impactful to hear and well stated. And I'm eager for us to go into questions and discussion, and I will start us off with public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 7. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. And please state your name and affiliation when you give your comment. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no hands in the room, I'll go to WebEx. We have 1 comment in the WebEx. Tom Phillips, I believe you can unmute and give your comment.
Oh, hi. I was probably left over from last time, but these comments probably relate here as well. Thanks for some of the insights on the Inland Empire. I have 2 quick comments that relate also to the energy equity burden thing. There's I've been reviewing and working with an ASHRAE resilient design working group on extreme heat and looking at power outages as well as the health issues for indoor heat. And one thing that I saw as a recent national mapping of power system reliability. They do it by county, and they look at intensity, duration, and frequency of the outages. And they do some machine learning analyses, and so they map the whole U.S. It's from Texas A&M Group with Oak Ridge National Lab. The first author is Ma, M.A., from 2024. And unfortunately, California is one of the hotspots for power system low reliability. And so you can look at that map, at least at the county level, and use that for EJ and other screening issues. So there's that kind of data out there now. And this project in particular, I think, has a more comprehensive database because some of the outage analyses, like from NREL a few years ago, only used the major utilities, I think, and not all the small rural and co-op utilities. And just to add to that, we know that low-income communities and rural communities have a much longer time for restoration of power. So there's that social vulnerability layered on top of the power system reliability problems. And then I was curious about the Inland Empire in terms of the housing types and quality to protect from not only extreme heat, but infiltration of wildfire and air pollution and so on. And for example, mobile homes tend to be very high risk. We've seen that especially in the Southwest and Texas and Arizona and other places, but we think that's a big problem in rural and lower income areas. And of course, older housing that lacks much protection. And then one other comment is when looking at the energy costs and availability of cooling, I think it's important to break out total energy costs into cooling versus heating, because we know cooling is going to increase a lot more with climate change. It has been. And also with the elderly, there's a big behavioral problem where they're not as sensitive or aware of the cooling issue or able to maintain and operate their cooling systems. So that's another human factor that doesn't show up, but if you look at elderly populations, you'll tend to pick up some of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond a little bit to that?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. As far as like housing, one thing that really always jumps out at me is how we keep building these houses or near so close to the freeways and the railroads and things like that. And they're saying, oh yeah, well, it's for access. Well, I mean, you're going to be too sick to go outside, basically. You know, you're in that cancer zone right there when you're near these kind of things. And I just really wish we could do something that would help us, you know, in those type of situations, as well as for the schools. Like there's really not guidelines for schools. Well, there's guidelines for schools, but there's no, like, here are the regulations. You can't have like this warehouse right next to the school. And that's something that we deal with over and over and over again. And because these schools were established on these main routes, now with AB 98, we have these truck routes going right through them. And it's just really, really scary to see what's happening in front of these schools, especially with these kids getting in and out of school or even, you know, staying there the extended day. As far as like the wildfires, I live in an area that is right next to a canyon, which is called Ritchie Canyon. And it's not necessarily one way out, but you do have to get to that main road. Everything else is a cul-de-sac. So there's probably 20 cul-de-sacs on there with a school. And we do, I mean, it's another thing that we have to tackle to look at defensible space and things. But, you know, when you live in these rural communities, you have access to less resources and there's less of a spotlight put on us. You know, the further you're away from that government center, it's just easy to kind of put us out here, forget about us, as well as for tribal communities. So it's definitely a concern. And I think people have this, or have had this idea of, well, you know, I don't live out near the forest or the mountains, so I'm not going to burn. But we have definitely seen people been impacted, and it really makes you look at, you know, having this dense housing, is this really helping us any at the end of the day?
Thanks, Jim. There are no more public comments, so turn it back for DACAG discussion.
Okay. Thank you. It's always great to get public comments and public engagement. So thank you, Tom. Who'd like to start? Any questions, comments, observations? Go ahead, Chris, and then Roman.
Hey, Jim, thank you for your presentation. It's really informative. Spent a limited amount of time in the Inland Empire. Did a little bit more this weekend, but would love to get out there more often. But yeah, just reflecting on transportation. Transportation pollution is a big source of emissions in the Inland Empire. Just thinking about the purview of the bodies that we are advising. Has there been any engagement? I wonder, or mapping to understand if we are getting resources out to the Inland Empire for things like zero emission, medium and heavy duty vehicles. So yeah, I think the consumer-facing EV programs to get people into cars make a lot of splash, but maybe less so for the medium and heavy duty programs. So I know CEC, for example, has a program called Energize, and that one puts in charging infrastructure for medium and heavy duty vehicles. And then there's a companion program called HVIP that provides incentives for medium and heavy duty EV purchases. Those are, not at the scale of the problem, but I'm curious what the uptake looks like, since a big sort of intent of those programs is to help reduce air pollution coming from these sources.
Well, thanks, Chris. We do have a truck study that we did recently that I could share with you all, and we're going to be presenting it at one of our upcoming events. But it talks about how most of the truck drivers that we interviewed have no idea that there are these incentives. But additionally, there's just not enough stations to charge up along the route. Like not a consistent route that has these charging stations. And it really, they just say that it really, it's going to take a long time to fix that. And then we say, well, hey, how many charging stations do we want? Because now it's going to become a truck route. And at that point, when it's a truck route, it doesn't just say, well, this is a truck route for electric vehicles. So, with all of this, logistics infrastructure, how much charging infrastructure do we actually want to put here? And so that's something that we really think about. I know that, I think it was through AB 617 that we had a truck, it's kind of like a truck program that we had out here. And again, a lot of people were just really kind of afraid of it. Now, I know I mentioned this before, I'm really not sure how, I know that EJ groups really don't like these bridge solutions, but I was like, why don't we look at hybrids? Because I don't really even see information on hybrid trucks. I didn't buy an electric vehicle the last time I bought a hybrid, and it really cuts your emissions almost in half on just a vehicle. So, yeah, it's not kind of like a popular conversation, but I just feel like if we're trying something and it's not working yet, that maybe we should try something else, because so many of the rules that we've put through like AQMD and stuff, they're like, yeah, that's just not going to work. So here we go back to square one. And so, I mean, how do we move forward from that? What is the solution? I used to fix trucks, which is really weird, but I used to work over at Peterbilt when the whole when people started putting the DPF filters in, right? And it was horrible because these independent drivers, come in, and first of all, their fines exceed the value of their vehicle, not to mention the cost of putting these filters on. So, I mean, I think like we know that at the end of the day, the people that are going to get left behind are getting, a lot of our independent drivers and things like that. So it's really a struggle. And then you get to the whole illegal truck parking issue, idling in there, them not having permits. It's not that, we all use, like, I order online, and it's almost like you don't even have a choice half the time anymore. Yeah, I'm open to getting more information, you know what I mean? Like, the better I am at things, better I can express them. But even when I talked to the president of the school board, he goes, well, we can't use those electric buses. I was like, why not? He's all, well, because if we take the kids to a football game or something, there's no place to charge and we're going to have to stop. I was like, are you sure? And just their whole idea or their pushback, I need to be able to express that better. And that's why I always say, hey, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to learn more so I can give them better answers,
Roman and then Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Jem, for the presentation, and thank you for sharing, your experience right now. Like, I didn't know you used to work on trucks. Like, it's amazing. Why I also really appreciate us like having these types of presentations, because one, like, obviously we learn more about the work, but then as we go through them, we learn more about the individuals as well. So really appreciate you sharing that. A reflection and then a question, right, for you. And as you were going through the presentation, and I think it was one of the slides, right, where you highlighted the American Lung Association report, right, and y'all being or the region that you're in being #1, right, and that probably hasn't changed, right, like it's been 1 or 2, right, over the years, right. And I think the reflection I'm having is like, we continue to see this data over and over, right? And yet we don't see much change in the way that we implement programs, right, to really help address, whether that's the air quality issues that communities are facing, energy burden issues, like whatever, all those issues, right? And yet we have the data, and I think what we continue to be asked for is more data, right, to be able to then do something, right? And it's like really unfortunate. It's just like this vicious cycle that we continue to kind of go through of like, yeah, where's the data? Well, the data's there, and it's like, no, but we need more data. And it's like, how do we overcome that? And I think that's more of like just who knows how we can answer that question, right? But it's one of those where like I think it's become exhausting, right? Of like continuing to have to like showcase that your community or your is #1 top for air quality, air pollution or whatever. And so it's like really thinking of like how we could potentially use these spaces, right, to really push these agencies, right, the two that we're engaging here, Air Resources Board, others, to be better about really implementing or really focusing in on those regions that we know are high impact regions, right? We know have the worst air quality, have the high energy burdens, because like I keep hearing like we want to address equity, we want equity for all, right? But yet, like what we are continuing to do is just like equality, right? Like we're stretching everything super across many, which is fine. And we're not really then fully addressing the key concerns of particular communities, right? Like what you're talking about today, right? And so it's like, how do we continue to use these spaces to push them to do more of that, right? And better target, and go deeper, right? And like, if we know these communities are highly impacted, why can't we really like go all in and get a bunch of incentives and programs and everything and see the impacts that I have on a community, rather than I think the approach that we've been having. So that's one. The other comment, sorry, before my question, is on the hybrid conversation you were having. I think that's one that we should continue to have one on, because I do hear from folks, right, like no transition fuels, let's go all zero emission, and maybe for certain instances like we do need to do that. And to your point, like we are falling short, right? And yes, we're making the transition to electric vehicles, and we are seeing the state meet its goals, but not for our communities, right? And so what should we be doing? Like, is it better to just replace an older polluting vehicle with a hybrid, and we make that happen now, versus having to wait more years and having that older polluting vehicle continue to operate to eventually get them into a ZEV, zero emission, years down the line, right? And I think we're really interested in exploring that further, because it's coming up a lot. And you brought it up, but we've been hearing it from other folks as well, and something that we should probably continue to explore. So my question though is, in thinking about, I know you highlighted several laws that were enacted, right, that eventually were rejected or pulled back because of the federal administration. But I'm just really curious, like, is there something that right now is like currently like stands out to you that that the Inland Empire like needs to be engaging in, whether that's like through a regulatory process, or even just thinking about like investments, like what are there key investments that you're looking to make sure that your community is being brought to your community, especially at the PUC or at the Energy Commission?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I could, when you talk about like, okay, we have all this data and everything, like I feel like a lot of the regulations aren't really decided on based on like the science and stuff like that and the data. It's really out of fear. Primarily it's, money, but, fear at the end of the day. What am I going to lose by making this transition? You know what I mean? Who am I going to impact, or how am I going to be impacted by that personally? But, most of the things that happen are failing. A lot of them, like there's no connected policy or, no enforcement. So even when I was talking about like the toilet seats or like them having the toilets, the low flow toilets, I was like, well, they last 25 years. You're not making them do it. So what do we have to do locally to make sure that those things are supported in our communities. Like, what kind of policy do we have to do to make sure that that happens? Maybe for landlords, since we're mostly renters anyway, do we have to create a policy that says, hey, you guys are getting a business license, you know, teach the city how to make sure that that's going to happen. You know, like for me, I'm like, you know, if you're getting a business license, you have to have an inspection, and you're going to have to replace these toilets or do these kind of things, because, well, although they're well intended, there's just that huge gap where it's falling off. Like in my kids were living in Northern California, and they have a mold issue there. You know, like all the little places that they rent, they have a lot of mold there because it's so humid. So, you know, we tried to advocate up there so that we could have a policy passed so that the city would go by and inspect either annually or when a tenant moved out, to make sure that it was safe for the students that were occupying a lot of those places. And, you know, unfortunately, I think that this trust, you know, when we come to these MOUs and stuff, that hasn't worked for us. So it goes back to that, like, okay, you know, what is that, like the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different income. So yeah, I think that's a lot of it, and really not just looking at simple solutions. I know we've had reports that come in that say, hey, this is where we're succeeding, but I think we've all said, hey, we want to know where the failures are. Like, I took a whole bunch of pictures of all like the transmission towers out here in my area, and the grass around them is ridiculously high and dry. I'm like that, to me, that's something that isn't really, like, is that really rocket science? Is that going to cost us a lot to figure out how to like trim that down? I went by the fire department taking pictures of the grasses growing around their place, but yet our residents get fined when that happens, and they have to come out and put weed killer on it. So, I mean, a lot of these inequities start and are supported locally, that we really need to get away from this patchwork policy that we do. That's just what I see, you know, in the Inland Empire.
Sarah.
Thank you, Jem. That was great. I am fairly familiar with PC4EJ, where you work, on the freight and like warehousing issues, because that we work together on that stuff. And I guess my question, and we can do this offline too, but I'm thinking of other ways we can partner, and what other like program areas or like focus areas are you looking at, like working in around energy? Like what are you guys interested in working on, in addition to the freight pollution problem, which I know is a huge thing for you locally?
Well, I know that I know that there's some aspect of the railroad that is handled, I believe, by CPUC. I don't really know exactly what that is, but, you know,
Actually,
we know that,
rail safety. It's just the
yeah.
safety, the
And
crossing.
so what does that like look at, you know, like what does that look like and stuff? Like what does that mean? And how can we look at that? Like, is it just safety internally, or is it among communities, or things of that nature, you know, because we had our in-use locomotive rule, and that's not going to happen. And we have these trains that idle out here forever. So, you know, what does that look like? I mean, for me personally, like, I think the energy thing is the biggest thing. You know, it's that infrastructure hamster wheel, kind of like what was said before. We just keep going. We're just chasing our tail on that, because if we can't fix the air, at least we have to provide a resource for community members to have good indoor air quality. And that's reliant upon them having power.
Okay,
And
yeah, I
so
would love to talk about that more offline. I have some ideas of how we could work together.
that'd be
Um,
great. I never have enough partners.
Seems like our work is very similar. We focus on air quality, of course, asthma and air quality and air monitoring and all that, and indoor air quality.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned before, but Like the project that I did before the Air I Breathe, we put monitors on the kids for a week. And some of their worst air quality was in the schools, which was insane because like, well, we have like these great HVAC systems. I said, yeah, you can't just have the monitor, you have to monitor it too. You know, you can't just say, well, I have a system up and it's working. You have to go ahead and go in and monitor. So yeah, anywhere we can partner would be great.
Okay, I don't think I see any additional hands raised, but please speak up if I'm missing you. Jem, again, thank you for this insight. I think it like kind of makes a lot of the stuff that we talk about a little bit more real and on the ground. And it's really important not to be like discussing these things in a vacuum and without direct experience and expertise. And like Ramon said, I think it's also nice to get to know each other a little better. So thanks for taking the time. I'm going to move us on to item 9, which is our priority area updates. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris, our vice chair, to talk a little bit about, to begin a conversation about 2026 priority areas.
Thank you, Julia. Hey, everybody. I have some slides put together just as a little bit of a visual aid. Before we launch fully into it, though, I want to disclaim that there's no pride of authorship here. Everything that I'm about to put forward is for discussion purposes. So I invite your candid feedback and input and ideas. Next slide, please. Yeah, but just to kind of tie this to some of the broader organizing that we're doing around strengthening the DACAG. All of this is toward purposeful engagement, accountable progress, collaborative action, empowered members, equity-centered impact, continuous improvement. So we can gloss over this, but just to kind of situate this within sort of the broader effort, what we hope to achieve, revamping some of how we collaborate. It's all in that vein. Next slide. So we have a lot of priority areas, and there are 8 that feels like too many priorities. I think the word priority has an etymology rooted in Greek, and that word was only ever singular in its native language. So that tells you a little bit about how we operate around here. But I apologize. I think my kids are home and my dog wants to get out of this room. But I'll keep going. And that isn't to say any of these priority areas aren't important, but it makes it hard to zero in and organize ourselves outside of the context of these monthly meetings that we have so many. So on the next slide, I'm going to hopefully launch us into a process to reduce our number of priority areas. So this is responsive to at least some informal feedback that I've heard. I feel personally that we have too many. So this straw proposal is just going to simply recommend a consolidated list, but that isn't to say that we can afford to shrink sort of the purview of what we pay attention to. So this reorganization really just rebundles sort of our priorities into a smaller number of categories. I think that can help to recognize some of the cross-cutting nature of the priority areas that we have already. Even as we've spoken about today, you can't really talk about affordability if the power's always off. So lots of the issues that we deal with here are cross-cutting. Hopefully it means that we can more easily convene priority area subject matter experts. So that's all of us. Each of us has signed up to priority areas, and it's a little bit idiosyncratic at the moment who gets tapped for which sort of opportunities to engage agencies between meetings, so we can sort of further clarify that. And yeah, I think streamlining member coordination with agencies is another potential outcome here. Limitations, again, we don't actually create more time. So it's not that we're going to find additional capacity to do our subject matter work outside of the context of our monthly meetings. And there's also a risk here that we appear to be deprioritizing crucial elements of what we ought to be focused on. So again, hopefully we can see that this is just a shrinking of the number of things and by recategorizing them rather than actually taking things off our plate, which maybe should be a part of this conversation as well. And then by forcing things together into a smaller number of groupings, we risk having some strained groupings, putting things together that don't really make sense together. So some considerations, we have to make sure that we are compliant with Bagley-Keene. So convening 3 or more subject matter experts may require a notice public meeting. Yeah, I think through this approach can have it so that each subject matter expert is a part of 2 to 3 priority areas each, including as backups. So that can give us some sense of the potential commitment here. I think it would be helpful if we had 1 lead for coordination purposes and 1 to 2 backups per group so that we can have the right number of folks engaged when agencies reach out to us or we stand up some standard processes around the regular reports that come out of agencies on a predictable cadence or following proceedings, et cetera, that help to guide sort of our work across the priority areas. And then finally, I've proposed this before. Hopefully we can have some cross-cutting coordination, collaboration across our working groups, given the intersecting nature of our topics. Next slide. All that preamble aside, here is a potential list. So we go from 5 to 8. You'll notice for the first group, I think it was a really valuable public comment we had last meeting that one of our blind spots potentially is access. So we don't often cover folks in California who don't have access to electricity or the services provided by our agencies here. So I think that's fundamental. You can't have affordability without access. So I think that needs to become a part of what we look at here. So the first group, access, affordability, resilience. Compared to the prior set of groups, what that does is it subsumes disconnections. That would still be a part of that first group. But having your electric power on and not disconnected is an aspect of access. It's also an aspect of affordability. So I think that's the first one. Decarbonization and clean energy innovation would merge the EPIC category that we have right now, which is sort of standalone with the building industrial gas system decarbonization and clean renewable hydrogen priority area. So I'm also simplifying titles a little bit, which I think could help. Long-term planning stays the same. I think that one deserves its own space. Clean transportation, that category will have also remained the same. And then the final category, I merge tribal and community engagement and participation with our workforce training and development category. So again, that one kind of hurts my soul a little bit. Grid Alternatives Workforce Development Organization, among other things. So we do sort of lose some at least optic prioritization here when we simplify our priority area titles. but hopefully not actually in practice. And then, yeah, I'll finish my slides real quick. I think these next few can go quickly. In addition to streamlining our priority areas, a companion exercise here is coming up with the tracking metrics we want to look at associated with each of those priority areas. Yep, next slide, please. You can look at the first one. So for access, affordability, and resilience, I won't read all of these. I throw out a bunch here for our later consideration. I think we will have also just gotten a really valuable look at the CEC's updated work on energy equity indicators, many of which I think will be relevant here. And to the extent that we already have solid data sources for the ones that we want to track regularly within the DACAG, that helps a lot. So if we see some here that look similar to what we can expect to see in our energy equity indicators, I would propose really just subsuming those wherever relevant. But first and foremost, the number and percentage of households with and without access to electricity by utility. Again, that's not something we've looked at here necessarily, but feels fundamental. To the extent that our focus here is on DACs, I think it's interesting to track these metrics across the board in DACs and outside of DACs to know the differential treatment that we see, conditions that we see in DACs with respect to some of these indicators. Households experiencing disconnections or arrearages by utility in DACs outside of DACs. And yeah, the duration of those disconnections, I think is important information as well. Energy burden, frequency and duration of public safety power shutoffs and other outages. Yeah, closely related to that, the average duration and the average frequency of those interruptions, grid investments benefiting DACs and tribes, et cetera, et cetera. So in this one, I think we would also be subsuming some information related to the performance of DER incentive programs. So we have DAC-SASH, we have SOMA, we have SCHIP, and the like. And I think programs like that could also be tracked within this category, since a big aim of those programs is to make energy more affordable. So those are some for our consideration on this slide. If we go to the next one, we can look at some potential metrics for my second of 5 categories: decarbonization, clean energy innovation. Here we would subsume, I think, all of the metrics we would care about tracking otherwise with respect to the EPIC program and the building, industrial, gas system decarbonization, clean, renewable hydrogen category currently. So any and everything there. But I do think that the zonal decarbonization programs would be an excellent focus here. I think there's some timely work happening that we'll want to zoom in on in this category. But we also need to know more fundamentally how those EPIC investments are reaching DACs or not, and tribal communities, number of households served by those programs. Also in this category, yeah, a lot, the reason DACs are local sources of pollution. So those peaker plants are seeing less uptime these days, thanks in part to solar and storage deployment. So we should certainly be tracking that over time. Greenhouse gas reductions attributable to our projects and so forth. And we can go to the third category just to preview some potential metrics in long-term planning. In this one, we want to make sure that there's representation of DAC and tribal priorities within those long-term plans. That feels pretty fundamental. I have just a short list here for us to consider. I'm sure there are so many more that we should fold in, but whether or not and how well we're engaging CBOs and other community advocates in those planning processes feel like important qualitative things to track. So that is to say, we should be tracking things with numbers, but also things that require a little bit more doing, qualitative surveys, etc. Next slide. 4 of 5, clean transportation. These, again, are just a few. I think some of the CEC's equity metrics work, some of that work has also played out as relevant to clean mobility programs. So I would want to make sure that all the work that's already happened across agencies to define what some of those metrics are would be incorporated here. I think CARB has done relevant work as well that we want to take stock of, because again, if we have good sources of data already, we don't want to reinvent the wheel or ask our agencies to duplicate efforts. So average household transportation burden, the dollar value and percentage of ZEB infrastructure investments in DACs, tribal lands versus non-DACs, and so on and so forth. Next slide. And then finally, tribal nations, community empowerment, subsuming workforce development, lots and lots to track here. So first, I want to note, I don't think that having this category as a standalone category means that there aren't tribal relevant metrics that we need to be tracking in those other categories. So this isn't necessarily comprehensive of everything relevant to tribal nations that we want to track, and you might have glimpsed some of the other mentions of tribal metrics in those other categories. But the number of meaningful engagement touch points, public meetings, consultations, that feels important, especially in relation to proceedings of import. The number and percentage of public engagement processes with tribal consultation, the number of DAC tribal residents trained through clean energy programs. We also want to be looking at local hiring, wage requirements, apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship requirements, and how those are reaching folks in DACs and tribal communities, low-income communities, etc. Percentage of program funds requiring community benefit or project labor agreements, so on and so forth. So I've really tried to couch some perspective metrics within the context of a smaller number of categories. But we go to the next slide. None of that is firm until you say it looks good. So I have some discussion questions here. What advantages and disadvantages do you see to consolidating our priority areas? What's your feedback about those specific categories proposed? What do we gain or lose, or what needs further consideration or refinement? What tracking metrics feel crucial to us within each priority category? So yeah, I would invite your feedback at this juncture. I think we have to start by taking public comment, but I'm interested in what folks have to say about what I've shared. And yeah, we can just close out with some next steps. So we'll want to firm up those priority area categories if they're different from our current set, assuming there's consensus on shrinking our number of priority areas. I think we should also reconfirm our SMEs by priority area, given that I think under a straw proposal where we have fewer, we'll need to kind of reassign folks so it's clear who is in each one, and that we have backups and aren't risking breaking BK rules. I think we should then schedule some initial priority area meetings, discuss and confirm some tracking metrics, and then we can set off and have our agency friends support us in bringing together some of those metrics so that we can have baselines and then conduct our work with an eye toward making sure that we have change over time in the right direction in everything that we're following. So I'll stop there. Briefly go off cam again to let my dog back in the room, but back over to you, Julia. Thank you.
This is life with dogs. This resonates. Chris, that was really, really excellent. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the initiative to really like sit and work this through and bring it back to us. It's really valuable and I appreciate it. I am thinking, I want to think a little bit about like our time and our process, because I did let some of the other sections go a little longer, and we're starting to get a little short on time for this meeting. And I think this is a big topic that deserves our time and attention. I think that we should put metrics aside for the moment. I think the first order of business is really to figure out what our priority areas are. And even that, I think maybe we won't be able to fully decide at this meeting. I also, as a workforce person, at first was like, oh, there's no workforce category. But what then that made me think about is the fact that really things like that should be integrated into all of the different categories. Yeah, it's cross-cutting, like you said, and also structuring it this way is actually very complementary, I think, with our equity framework, because you can kind of take each of these as our like topic categories, but then apply the equity framework lens with those to each of these topics and categories, and sort of ask the questions that are posed in that framework there. And that made me wonder, this is another bigger conversation, is if we should have subject matter experts by equity framework category as well. I personally am not super prepared to talk about, like, to be a subject matter expert on most of these categories, maybe on a couple. But I am able to think about some of the equity framework categories as they apply to these. So maybe there's a way we can have people sort of sign up for both. So that's something we can think about too. Yeah, and I loved your point about aligning with the energy equity indicators. I want to make sure we save a little bit of time to talk about the letter that Roger brought up at the beginning of the meeting. And so maybe let's just take like 3 to 5 minutes to get initial reactions and questions, and then let's make this a major topic of conversation and dedicate a big chunk of time for it at the December meeting. Does that sound good? Awesome. Okay, Sarah, I think that you have your hand raised.
I just want to make sure, sorry, that didn't go down. I just want to make sure we open for public comment.
Yeah, I'm not prompted on my run of show to do that. We don't usually do that for this section, but
have it in my minutes. I'll delete it.
Okay. Any initial reactions, comments, things that we should be thinking about before the December meeting when we continue this conversation?
I guess I could start. Oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead, Sarah.
I'll raise my hand.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with your strategy that we definitely need a longer time to discuss and decide anything on this. But I think it's a great start, and it's definitely much more in line with what I was thinking we should do. So I like it, generally, the concept, and I think it's good to take. We've been kind of like we've been limited by kind of operating within the way that the two agencies operate, and kind of just being dragged along in their in their wake. So I like the fact that it's a little bit more broad, and then we can figure out what of their proceedings or processes like fit into our buckets. But I look forward. I think I wish we could have like a day-long retreat. This is kind of a thing where I feel like it would be a board retreat in the normal world. I don't know if we can do that in a government advisory group.
Maybe we could. Ramon, thanks, Sarah. And then Fred.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for putting this together. I know this was a second iteration, right, of something that was presented before. So really appreciate the additional work that was done on this. A couple thoughts. I think definitely agree in trying to streamline the priority areas. I think over the years we've tried to tackle a lot, right? Which kind of goes back to a similar comment I was making earlier when I was talking to Jem, right? About like maybe we're stretching ourselves too thin, right? Just as the state looks at making all these investments, maybe we're also stretching ourselves too thin as well, right? When we have so many priority areas that we're engaging in. However, I will note, right, like it does allow us to engage on more issues, right, that maybe at times we wouldn't get if we limit it. But even with that said, I still think it makes sense for us to be more intentional and targeted with our time, right, knowing that we don't have a lot of time in these meetings either, right? So, I think that makes sense. I think generally the buckets that y'all outlined, it makes sense, right? And would want to move forward with what's there, right, and having a deeper discussion on each. I guess one question I would have, right, to Julia, what you were asking, right, is like in what we have as priority areas versus like what is in our framework. Like if we were to have folks sign up on both, like how would that work in trying to schedule meet? Like, is that, does that, how am I trying to, let me work this in my head. Does that allow for like, CEC and CPUC to reach out, right? If it's in our framework, but not necessarily then potentially identified as a priority area, right? Like, does there have to be a priority area for us to get that invitation, right? So maybe that's an outstanding question that we might need some guidance on. And then the last thing I'll note is I think like if this is the path that we take, right, and if this is generally I think what we are looking at as priority areas, a request, and I think it's been kind of an ongoing request now, dating back to my time, is well as like really having kind of a yearly outlook, right, of what those proceedings and or dockets are that are coming up that are related to the priority areas. So we also get a sense like, yeah, this year, like, it's going to be big on, obviously affordability, right? But like what within that, right, is coming up that we should definitely maintain that. For transportation, it's really only going to be the investment plan for CEC and, maybe one proceeding at the PUC. And I think that would also help us have like a better understanding of how to better prepare our agendas, and then even just thinking about a year, right? To then know like, okay, we definitely need to prioritize this because it's coming up. So I think if we can get that map or, timeline of proceedings and dockets, that would be really helpful. And yeah, I'll pause with that. But yeah, thank you all for the hard work. Oh, no, I remember. The other part is I'm not going to be here at the December meeting, so please do let me know if there's anything that I like of what I could share, with you all, so that can help inform or provide my perspective into that conversation. And sorry, the last thing now I remember also is with SB 544, right? That ending soon. Did we ever resolve that issue? Because it just goes to the question around whether we need to continue to can we meet virtually or not moving forward, and kind of was prompted by your question, Sarah, about like a day-long retreat, right? Like, yes, I agree, but then thinking about how we're going to be meeting in the next year.
Thanks for that reminder. My understanding is that we are good to continue meeting the way that we have been. And I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. Yeah, and yeah, great questions, Ramon. Fred, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Oh, we're great until 2030. That's a good, healthy extension. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Fred, and then I'd like us to talk about, see if we can get a volunteer to work on the bit that Roger brought up at the beginning. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay. Great work, Chris. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. And I too have kind of questions on like our goals and improving our communication. I think this helps us get zeroed in maybe a little bit more on each topic. It was mentioned about, our structure and meeting. Yeah, a full day retreat by our committee to talk about this would be nice, but if we can't do something like that, can we maybe send all of our comments and questions to this, maybe to Chris or somebody to consolidate it, individually? Can we maybe do that in order to kind of accomplish the one-day retreat? And then also for myself, I already know that I'm going to miss the December meeting, so I'd like to see some of this. And for myself, I could improve the communication of the priority groups so that we could try to accomplish some goals. And I think we need to identify those goals a little bit better in each area. And on the one, tribal nations and community, yeah, myself, I think we could eliminate tribal from the title, and not that I want to take anything away from outreach to tribes or anything like that, but I just feel like if it's community engagement, then it means everybody, not necessarily community and also tribal nations. I think it means, tribal nations are part of all the community. So I think, community engagement just means everybody. And if that means, this nation or that nation, or, these people or those people, then we need to zero in on that if we think that there's, different communities that aren't engaged or we're not reaching out to. So that's kind of my comments on that. I just feel like this is a really good start to kind of condense it and get a little more zeroed in on each area, and really appreciate it. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Fred. I also will not be at the December meeting. And Chris has, in his role as vice chair, will be facilitating. So that's actually, I think, works out well. Chris, would you be willing to have folks send you comments and questions to continue the conversation before then?
Happy to, and hopefully we can lean on our agency friends to help put that together. I know there's even considerations around all having us on an email together, so would love to make that work.
Awesome. Good. Wonderful. Great. So we will continue this conversation at the December meeting. Folks can send additional comments and questions to Chris, and we will let you know the best method for doing that. I wanted to quickly talk about the cost of capital proceeding. We had a request for a letter. If we have folks who are interested in that topic and who'd be interested in working on putting a letter together, then we could bring that to the December meeting and get it to the get it in by the due date, which I believe is the 18th. So I think our next meeting is the 12th, and that would give us sufficient time for folks to work on the letter offline, vote on it as a group on the 12th, and then send it in. Do we have anyone who'd be interested in taking that up?
I'm potentially interested. This is Elena. I don't know if you can see raised hands, but I had a question, which is, I don't know if we have quorum for the December meeting. And if we don't have quorum and we write a letter, can we approve it at that meeting?
Yeah, staff and agency folks, could you help us out with that one?
Hi, this is Ryan Young, Deputy Public Advisor. Without a quorum, the body couldn't take action in the manner that is suggested, but I will turn to Renee Webster Hopkins for the technical analysis for that.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, that's correct, that the body could not adopt a letter on behalf of the body. You always have another option of having an individual member of the DACAG submit a letter in their individual capacity, noting their membership on the DACAG, if timing is an issue, but signing a letter on behalf of the entire body would require a quorum.
Do we have any update on if we have quorum?
Was the question? Yeah, I think the question was actually, do we plan on having quorum? Right? Yeah, I would like to know that.
Our current estimates are that we will not have quorum in December.
Can we reschedule the meetings? I guess because it seems like the topics we're going to discuss will be very important also for all the people that are going to be missing. if we decide what our priorities
I don't
are.
think rescheduling it would work at this point. I know the staff have put a lot of time into like the agenda and the planning around it. Yeah, I think like it does sound like even if we don't have quorum, maybe there's still some value in writing a letter. We have done that before. You know, Elena, it's kind of up to you since you were the one who raised your hand to support with that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think about whether or not there would be a way to get quorum. Another option would be to, I was going to say, approve the existing letter that many groups signed on to, but I do not know if we would all have to see that.
It.
Yeah. I guess if I write a letter independently, it doesn't have to be decided here if I'm not representing Dick. I guess I don't quite understand how that works.
Yeah, it's confusing to me if we write a letter and sign and say we are a DACAG member, and we're not actually saying that we are writing it on behalf of the DACAG, right? So it's not really the same weight.
So I wonder if we could potentially still work on writing a letter, right? And like get approval for that. And then hopefully, I mean, to Ryan's point, there probably won't be quorum, but maybe there will. And at least the letter is ready. For the letter's there. And then I guess to Renee, a question for you is like, if we can't get quorum and can't get voted on, can the language within that letter be used by, independently by someone, right? So like, could I take the language in that letter and then submit it on my behalf and then sign it as you said?
Right. I think that any one of you can submit a letter under your own signature, not on behalf of the DACAG, but the values of bringing it to a meeting, even if we don't have quorum, is at least you might get the dialogue from your colleagues on strengthening the letter. But opting for that route, just an independently signed letter, does not require agendizing at the DACAG.
Okay.
I haven't been around long enough to know if this is a crazy idea, but have we ever noticed a meeting for a single issue like this? So, for example, if we wanted to meet for 30 minutes as the DACAG, I think the requirements are that would need to be a notice meeting. Have we ever had a short meeting to resolve a single issue in that way?
This is Ryan, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I would say I've never heard of it, but I don't see why we couldn't. It's more of an issue of the support staff capacity, which is usually our limitation.
So could we asynchronously collaborate on a letter so long as we're not meeting in a quorum and then come together in a short meeting with a quorum to decide that we want to collectively endorse it or not?
I think an SME group could, so at least 3 people could work on one together, is generally how we do it. And then send it for the whole group to approve or not.
But Chris, you're asking if we can do a separate, like just an ad hoc meeting for like 10 minutes that's publicly noticed just to vote on this.
Yeah. Is that crazy?
Doesn't sound crazy to me, but I don't know what legal and agency folks.
Yeah. If Ryan could start, sorry, if I could go first. I just would note that you, as you correctly noted, that you still would need a quorum. And, you know, I believe, Renee, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but 5 people could work together on a letter if there was a quorum, right? But I just want to caution you that in terms of timing and the work and infrastructure that it takes to put on these meetings, it would require the same amount from a staff perspective as a normal meeting. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, like the agenda of the meeting would still have to be made public 10 days before the actual meeting.
Is there
Right, and
anyone who
if I
can't?
might, if I could just clarify Ryan's statement, and Chris, I like the description of an asynchronous collaboration on a letter, but it would be limited to a maximum of 5 people collaborating asynchronously on that letter, so that it doesn't amount to a quorum of you meeting in a serial meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there would still be, you know, if a number of you work together on a draft letter, then there would still be the draft letter posted to the docket, as a lot of work product usually is, so that all members would have visibility on it before the meeting. And then at the meeting, you could discuss it and refine it and vote on it.
It seems like, you know, the trickier piece to figure out here is the like ad hoc meeting and sort of all the noticing requirements and all of that, particularly with the holiday next week. What I think I mean, we could certainly get a hold of the letter that that already got that Roger is mentioning, and you know, all of our individual organizations could certainly sign on to it. That's another option. And then maybe going forward, we have a conversation about like, hey, is this ad hoc meeting thing a workaround? Because this does come up a lot. It's not just this issue, but like, is this ad hoc meeting something we could think about for when the timelines of our meetings and when things need to be approved and submitted don't quite work out?
Yeah, and maybe this is
Okay,
a good. Oh, sorry, Julia. I was just going to say, to answer
no,
your
go
question,
ahead.
and maybe not for me to answer the question, right? But it might be a good topic for us to dive deeper into. You know, I know this December meeting, most of us are not going to be there, but if we do end up having, I think, that day-long retreat or something where we can spend some time thinking through that, because I think over the years we've also tried to find ways like those. I don't know, we've been trying to get creative, right? With what is allowed to, you know, respond to kind of short notices like the one today. And so, yeah, maybe it's something that we can better outline and maybe have documented for us to kind of point to. I think, you know, Renee always, it's great to have Renee on and provide that, but it's just like we could beforehand have that information in front of us, right? To be able to respond. And then the other point I just wanted to make on this, and you know, it's also Greenlining has, and you know, we've been engaging on this now recently, but like this is like a really big topic, right? And did this ever come up? Like, and I'm just curious of like, again, I go back to this question around like, what are the proceedings and dockets that are in front of us that have major implications to our communities? And this is one that's pretty significant, right? And you know, on our own, I think we can engage, but this is maybe something that should have been flagged for us. And you know, I apologize for not flagging it earlier, but I think like, you know, I think these are the types of things that I think we're probably looking forward to engage further. So just flagging that, I think, as we think about agenda items for next year.
I agree.
Totally agree. And I think it fits under affordability, right? Like,
I mean, I was going to suggest that the Affordability and Disconnections SME group handle this, but 3 out of 4 of them are not here today. So,
yeah.
Is there any way that any of you guys who are going to be not in Sacramento can just call in for like 10 minutes on the 12th and vote on this agenda item?
Maybe. Let's do this. Elena, would you be willing to work on a letter and then bring it to the December meeting for a vote? And everyone, maybe we can put that at like the very beginning of the agenda. And I can call, everyone can try to do our best to call in. If we don't have quorum, like that's just what it is.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I can do that. And if there is anybody who would like to see that ahead of time and review it, let me know. Otherwise, I can just work on a draft. And the other part of this is if there's anyone on staff who would like to let me know if I'm supposed to share that ahead of time, and if so, how far ahead of time. I can't remember what's supposed to be docketed and when. Just let me know what those parameters are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. I know we're at time, so I'm going to try to go quickly through the last few items. Item 10, LIOB updates. Do we have anything?
Oh, updates.
Okay, thank you. Item 11, agency announcements, CEC and then CPUC, please.
Hi there, this is Ryan Young. I just wanted to alert you to a couple of quick things. One is that this group recently in July heard presentations on the AB3 process, which concerns seaport readiness for offshore wind. Staff just held some fantastic workshops that I think would be of interest, and the public comment period is on December 19th, 2025. The deadline is, and we'll send some information about this in the newsletter. Otherwise, Dorothy will be in touch to schedule some tech check office hours to make sure that everyone is able to attend these meetings without any hiccups. And we will also want to put a plug in for the 2025 Clean Energy Hall of Fame Awards ceremony that's going to be held on December 4th, 2025 in Sacramento. All are invited to attend, and we'll also place the link in the chat. Thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Ryan. CPUC?
Hi, this is Zara with the CPUC. Just a couple announcements. The first is that the Low Income Oversight Board is having their 4th quarterly meeting on December 11th in San Diego at the San Diego City Administration Building and online through WebEx. That's from 9 to 3. I think it'd be really great if a member attended and reported back to the rest of the group. And then lastly, that we are recruiting for the next round of DACAG applicants. We're going to be accepting applications until January 15th. More information, or they'll be posting about it on the CPUC website shortly. So stay tuned for that. Tell your friends.
Excellent. Any other updates that I missed? Okay, great. Thank you, folks. Item 12 is agenda setting and attendance. I have, we're going to be talking more about the priority areas. We're going to be talking about hopefully trying to do a vote on this cost of capital proceeding. And there are going to be a few other things that I think are already agendized. So just a reminder that it is December 12th. So it's a little bit off from our usual third Friday schedule. And it is in Sacramento, and there is a call-in option, is my understanding. And with that, I'm going to take us to our final public comment, item 13, and hand it back to you, Zara.
Thank you. This public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. We'll now check for any comments in the WebEx. Seeing none, back to you, Julia.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you to staff and to members and commissioners. We are now on item 14, adjournment, and I hope everyone enjoys the Thanksgiving holiday with friends and family, and we will see folks who we see on December 12th at 1 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye.
Thank you.